Tonight, on Legislative Review. Contentious legislation proposing a cap on rent increases. Plus, a few of the bills Governor Bob Ferguson signed so far. This is Legislative Review. Thank you for watching Legislative Review. I'm Angela Nolasco with today's top discussions in the state legislature.
People are getting crushed by rent increases. Rent is the single greatest cost in a household budget, and when your rent goes up, your budget bottoms out. 40% of the people in this state, though not 40% of the people in this body, are renters or manufactured homeowners, and they have zero protections.
By putting price controls on, that's exactly what the state is doing. They're taking the private sector's investment and saying, we'll take care of it now. We're going to give you the guidelines of what you must do in order to stay in the business. And most people say, I've had enough.
State senators held a floor debate late Thursday on a controversial bill that seeks to limit how much landlords can raise their rent each year. In its original version, House Bill 1217, which the House passed last month on a 53-42 vote, aims to limit rent increases to 7% within 12 months and prohibits rent hikes during the first year of a tenancy, with certain exemptions. It also proposes to require landlords to provide a minimum of 90 days' notice before raising rent and sets new limits on move-in fees, security deposits, and late fees. For example, late fees can't exceed 2% of rent for the first month, and they gradually increase over consecutive months, but only to a maximum of 5% after 3 months. For mobile home communities, the bill also caps rent increases to 5% and limits move-in fees, security deposits, and late fees. Beyond the rent changes, the bill will also give tenants the power to terminate their lease if a landlord violates the new rent rules, should the bill become law. The bill had a total of 87 proposed amendments from both chambers, 6 of which were adopted. Among those, an exemption for single-family tenancy for units not owned by a real estate development trust. And, specifically from the Senate floor, an amendment was adopted to increase the annual 7% cap to 10%, plus the Consumer Price Index. Supporters say it will help prevent housing instability, which is a growing concern in many communities. They see it as a big win for renters' rights and a step toward fairer housing policies. Speaking in favor of the bill, Democratic Senator Emily Alvarado.
Under this bill, it doesn't change the fact that landlords don't pay B&O taxes on rental receipts, and they still don't have to pay that. Landlords are business owners, and they deserve predictability. But also, their customers, who are renters, who rely on that housing to meet their basic human need, deserve predictability too.
But not everyone agrees. Some landlords argue that the rent cap could discourage investment in rental properties, especially in areas where maintaining and upgrading properties requires higher rents. Speaking against the bill, Republican Senator Keith Gaynor.
But if somebody gets into the rental market, they have a lot of obligations that they have no control over. And yet we're trying to put a price control on a dynamic situation. And Mr. President, I just don't feel like that is good business. If we do put price controls on, which is what we're doing, it disincentivizes production.
The Senate took a floor vote.
Mr. President, there are 29 ayes, 20 nays.
Having received a constitutional majority, engrossed House Bill 1217, as amended by the Senate, is declared passed. The title of the bill will be the title of the act.
House Bill 1217 now heads back to the House for further review. From the Senate, we go to the governor's office, where Governor Bob Ferguson signed 23 bills into law so far. From healthcare and juvenile detention to medication assistance for assisted living to driver notifications, here are some of Washington's new laws. House Bill 1142, which would standardize the requirements for training and certification for in-home long-term care workers, like spouses and family members. Senate Bill 5128 aims to improve access to medical care for juveniles in detention facilities to avoid healthcare disruptions and support their transition back into the community. There's also a bill expanding medication assistance to community-based care settings, like adult family homes and assisted living. This bill also allows caregivers to administer insulin, including insulin pens. Senate Bill 5577 mandates that Medicaid covers all FDA-approved HIV antiviral drugs without step therapy. House Bill 1439 would align the State Department of Licensing, or DOL, with federal regulations, enabling the agency to deploy electronic notifications if a driver's license is suspended or revoked. House Bill 1314 will bolster support for early childhood education by amending sections of the Early Learning Facilities Grant and Loan Program, which would help childcare providers respond to emergencies. In the area of housing, House Bill 1353 was also signed into law. It would allow professionals like architects applying for a permit to build or transform properties into accessory dwelling units to enter into a self-certification program to expedite the project. In the labor arena, we have Senate Bill 5209, which expands the role of the Department of Labor and Industries, or LNI, as a limited authority law enforcement agency. This would enable them to obtain search warrants and conduct criminal investigations into violations. In public health, House Bill 1209 would regulate the sale of sodium nitrite, a lethal compound in high concentrations known to have been purchased by at least 30 teenagers in Washington state to end their lives. In passing this law, Washington now becomes the fourth state to do so. Lastly, Senate Bill 5457 would amend tax regulations for broadcasting businesses like TV and radio, and establish a 0.48% gross income tax except for network, national, and regional advertising. For more information on these bills, you can log on to leg.wa.gov. And as always, keep watching Legislative Review and our gavel-to-gavel coverage on TVW to keep up with the session's legislative activity. That's it for this episode of Legislative Review. Make sure to join us nightly at 8 and 11 for your highlights on the state legislature. And follow us on social media. Have a good night.